here at the Macon Film Festival, about to talk to Linda Brown for You See Me. She is the producer and the director. Tell me a little bit about you, and then let's hear about your film. But tell me a little bit about you.
I grew up in Pennsylvania. I went to school in Philadelphia. I went to Temple University. I studied filmmaking there, and then I moved to Los Angeles to the American Film Institute, where I studied cinematography. In, I think it was the late 90s, I started teaching part-time at USC, and then they hired me as a full-time tenured faculty in 2003. And after a few years teaching there, now I am the head of cinematography at USC.
Wow, that's amazing. that's
in
ranked
a field
the
where there
number.
aren't a lot of women, too, so I'm really happy to provide a role model for a lot of the women. And I'm happy to say that here at this festival, a lot of the people who have interviewed me, they're women behind the camera, which is rare in Los Angeles, so I'm happy to see that.
So tell us a little bit about how this film came to be. You said there was a story, a really cool story behind it, about survival and challenge and hardships. So tell me a little bit about it.
So in 2004, my father had a stroke. And it was a debilitating stroke. He was, in a wheelchair. His speech was garbled. It's hard to tell when your speech is garbled. Is it cognitive? Is it just the speech? And those first 48 hours, a lot of recovery can happen or not, and then it's long-term recovery. So I was a bit in shock, and I thought, well, what do I do when I don't know what to do? And I pick up a camera, and I had not brought my camera with me. So I got one of his home video cameras, and I just started recording what was going on. And I think in my mind, I thought, well, if he recovers, we'll have these nice videos of him when he had the stroke, and now he's so much better. But his path was a roller coaster. He'd get better, and then he'd have another mini stroke. And I mean, he had health issues. So he passed away in 2006. And thank you. And I thought, well, that's the end of my filming. But what started to happen was I noticed that the dynamics in my family started to shift. Because my father was a patriarch. He was a pretty dominant personality. And so his absence created this hole. And so it's how do I relate to my mother now? How do my siblings relate to me now? Because I think I tried to step into his place, and they quickly let me know, that's not your position. So what I really started to think about is, number one, how do we deal with a loss of someone in the family, number one. Number two, how, at the same time we were dealing with that, there's the trauma of illness, and not just stroke, but any major illness in a family, that how it has an effect on, it ripples throughout the family, Right. A lot of issues that I think are probably kept undercover, under the radar, when things are going along smoothly, they start to surface. And so there's all this tumultuous stuff coming up during the worst time, when we're not emotionally equipped to handle with it, when our tempers are flaring, where we're feeling threatened and vulnerable because of all of this. And so I thought, I'm going to make a film about this whole experience. But I never looked at the footage for 5 years. And then I got scared because I thought, what if I look at the footage and it's really not good footage for a film? And I've told all these people I'm going to make this film. Or what if I look at the footage and I start to grieve all over again? Because I had been into, a couple years into my grieving process. But the scariest one was, what if I look at the footage and I do have to make the film? And that's what happened. So I decided, pretty stubborn, okay, I better hire an editor. So I hired one of my former students from USC, who was up and coming in the documentary field. What he really did is he asked a couple key questions that, as soon as I responded with anger, I knew there was some truth in. At one point he said, I don't understand your relationship with your mother. And I got really defensive because I was close to my dad and I never felt close to my mother. And so then I started to think, you have the choice, Linda, to change your relationship with your mother. It doesn't have to stay the same as it was when your dad was alive. And when I thought I'll spend more time with my mother, I kind of got scared because these are the thoughts that went through my mind. Well, I know what I did with my dad. We would do things together. We were doers. My mother just reads books, and she's very content. She's low maintenance. And so I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do with my mother. And then I started thinking, isn't this ridiculous? You don't know your mother, So I thought, well, let's be brave and let's just try it and see what happens. And I realized...
And let's video it and see
And let's video it, and let's keep interviewing her and asking her how she feels about this. And then the films took on this whole other kind of, it's not just about the stroke. The stroke was the incident that started all this, but then it went on to another whole journey. So I was making the film. I thought it was finished. About 3 different times I emailed my siblings and said, okay, does anybody have any other footage that they haven't sent me, home movies, video that I don't know about, that I might use for the film? And out of the blue, my brother, who I think was in the middle of a divorce, so he was kind of like off the map at this point, and he said, oh yeah, I think I have some videotapes that Dad gave me. Let me look in my attic and see. And he sends me these videos, and I'm kind of looking through them one Saturday night. The picture was locked, and all of a sudden I look at this video, and it's just my dad at Christmas, and then he taped over it. One weekend when we all went away, he pulled the camera out and he interviewed himself. And he talks about all these things that I had been trying to talk to him about for years that he didn't want to discuss. You know, his relationship with us, the fact that he wasn't emotional with us, the fact that there was domestic violence in the house, the fact that he had episodes. I mean, he was a really moody guy, you know, that he wouldn't talk about his depression. In this video, he talks about all these, and I'm like, oh my God. So I quickly called my editor and I said, I just found this video, and I'm telling him, and he goes, okay, he was in Oakland, I'm in LA. He says, overnight it to me, and I'll take a look at it tomorrow, and I'll tell you what I think. And he calls me the next day, and he goes, we're not done. We have to, this is the film, right?
Oh my gosh.
So we went back into the cutting room again, and so the project took a long time. But for me, it was a very healing project, because then I take this footage back to my mother and I show it to her, and there was closure. Because the way my father passed away, it was really uncomfortable, and he was angry, and he was accusing my mother of having a boyfriend. And so she had to live with this horrible ending to this marriage and this life.
Yeah.
And so this tape brought her like, okay, he did love me, and he was sorry for those things, and he could express it, but just not in the way we wanted him to,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So the making of the film was a very healing process for me. It gave me closure, it gave me understanding of who these people were, who I am, because
Yeah.
I very much carry a lot of that with me, you know, the way
course.
we come from our families. And so I thought, okay, the film's over, that's it. But traveling with the film became a whole other journey, because taking it to audiences afterwards, I get emails days later from people saying, I want to share a story with you I haven't shared with my husband.
Oh my
Or they'll tell me
goodness.
things like, I found out when I was an adult that my mother wasn't really my mother. I mean, they're telling me these. So what it's really about in the end is it's about 2 things. How do we address topics that we're ashamed of? Mm-hmm. And we don't want to, they're just topics we're not supposed to talk about. Just keep them where they are. I think that keeping them secrets is a burden. I think that the
Absolutely.
shame and the stigma is just way too painful for us to carry with us. And so my goal is, if anybody can look at this film and say, you've given me license to start talking about things that have been bugging me for years and I really want to address in my family. Because, you know, I'm not saying that it's easy to do this.
No.
And I think that you better be prepared. If you start bringing up heavy topics in your family, you're going to get pushback and resistance from family members.
Of course.
And it's going to be unsettling in yourself. You're going to wonder sometimes, should I have started this?
Yeah.
But for the people brave enough and driven enough for some, I guess because their pain is deep enough, that want to do this, I hope that I give them some insight of how it can be done. And to do it with tenderness.